Welcome to Up Close and Personal. I'm your host, Carl Zymak. Today's special guest is Cindy Bauer. Cindy has served as the city clerk since first being appointed in 2012 due to the retirement of Mary Ann Riley at that time. She is now serving her third four-year term in office. She began her long career with the city at age 16 as a student co-op from the Taylor schools. She is a certified Michigan municipal clerk, secretary of the Association of Wayne County Clerks, vice president of the Taylor Goodfellows, and she volunteers for other various organizations throughout the city. Welcome to the show, Cindy.
Thanks, Carl.
It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Happy to be here.
I know you're busy today, as every clerk is every day, it seems. Let's jump right into this. When it comes to elected officials, you're truly a local success story. I don't want to get you going, but but you are.
Thank you.
Take us back to when you started with the city of Taylor. What did you do? What were you doing at that time?
So I interviewed back when I was 16, as you said. I started with the city, and I interviewed for a co-op position. It's kind of a funny little story. There were a couple of opportunities that my former typing teacher, Mrs. Hicks, offered me. One was a trucking company, and one was city job. Okay. My mom at the time said, "You're going to the city," and I wanted to work at the mall with my friends, but anyways, so I listened to my mother, of course, because I always did, and I went to the interview with the building department, and I did not get that job. Okay. Then I interviewed for purchasing, and I was hired. Okay. And that just kind of opened the door, and I'll let you know, when I came to City Hall, I was overwhelmed. Okay. From a girl that had a couple little jobs at hostessing and then working as a snack bar attendant. This was a big deal for me.
Where had you worked before?
I worked at Woolworth's in the snack bar.
Okay.
I'm dating myself there, aren't I? And then I worked at Chi-Chi's as a hostess. Okay. So both places are no longer with us, but both good starting jobs for a 16-year-old kid.
Now, who were you working for in purchasing at that time?
I started working, I worked for Parker Salowich, and Dottie McCullough was the secretary at the time, and they were both just a joy to work with. I look forward to coming to work every day after school. I worked all of my breaks, spring break, my senior year. You could find me here at City Hall. I just fell in love with it when I walked in, and the people, the work, it became a passion.
Where did you go from there?
From the purchasing department, so when you're a co-op, you are only allowed to work so long, and then I had to separate for, I think it was like a week that they had to kind of let me go. Okay. And then I interviewed for a job at the senior center, working for the former director, Mr. Dotson. Okay. All right. And then from where do you go? I worked there for a few years, and the former treasurer, Wayne Avery, reached out and said, "Hey, are you interested in a full-time job?" I said, "Of course." So he hired me in the treasurer's office in the tax department. At the time, we had an individual tax department. Okay. Because we did all of the mailing of tax bills, filing of receipts. That was all manual back then, so that's where I was hired in.
Now, Cindy, when you were at that point in time, city employment, a lot more employees, correct?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
a
layers
ton
and layers
more
and layers.
Employees, and it was actually, it was a wonderful job for a 19-year-old to have. I was 19 when I was hired full-time. Right. And I was very fortunate, and just, like I said, I still do. I love coming to work every day.
Now, you worked for Avery for a little while. Where do you go from there?
I was actually bumped out of his office back in the day. There were so many of us, but as jobs were eliminated throughout the years. Right. I was bumped, and I went to the assessor's office, where I worked for a few years and obtained my level 2 assessor's certificate.
Did you ever think of staying in the assessor's office?
You know, it wasn't for me. As you know, Carl, I'm a people pleaser, and that particular job, people are not happy to see you. Okay. When you come out to measure their addition, to add it to their assessment, to their taxes, basically, yeah, they're not real happy to see you, and that just wasn't for me. It's interesting work, which, you know, kind of led to where I am now, where there's a lot of state laws involved, and same thing with assessing. Right, right.
Now, you eventually end up at the DPW, don't you?
I did go to PD for a little while.
You went to PD
actually,
too?
let me back up. Oh, yeah, I've been. So when I left assessing, I went to purchasing again and worked for Parker Salowich again. Parker was a wonderful boss. Parker was like a second dad to me. Every clerical person I work with was like a second mom to me. You know what I mean? It was just a great place to be, like a family. I went to the clerk's office, or I went to purchasing, and then again I got bumped.
Okay.
I went to the clerk's office, and I worked for former clerk Dorothy West,
Okay.
who became like a second mom to me, kind of guided me through, I met my husband, I planned my wedding, I had my first baby when I worked in Dorothy's office.
On top of the
So-
fact that she is a flat-out legend.
Oh yeah, Dorothy was wonderful. I was never without in her office. If I looked the least bit thirsty, I had a drink on my desk. If I looked the least bit hungry, I had something on my desk. So Dorothy was, she was all in all a great boss, a great leader. So,
Now, where do you go? Where do you
so
keep,
I went
keep
from
moving?
the clerk's office, and I went to DPW.
Okay.
I worked for the then vehicle maintenance superintendent, Bob Mack. Bob was also a wonderful boss. You know, at that time I had a small child, and you know what I mean. So
Oh, yeah.
it becomes more difficult to maneuver working in the home life once you throw a baby in the mix.
Yeah.
So Bob was a wonderful supervisor at the time, and so I worked for him for a little while, then I got bumped again.
Okay.
I went over to PD, went to police department records.
Okay.
And I worked there where I had my second child.
Okay.
Went on maternity leave with her, and then when I came back, an opportunity came to go back to the DPW, but in a different role,
Okay.
more of like a DPW clerk versus vehicle maintenance.
Okay. All right.
And then I went there for 13 years.
Really?
Yeah, I was.
Wow.
Yeah, 12 years. I was the departmental aide there, so it's like the assistant to the director, basically.
Okay.
Then I was promoted to supervisor,
Okay.
and then I was there under, I think it was 5 directors
Oh
over
my
the 12
goodness.
years.
Wow.
Yeah.
All that time. Now, how do you end up back at the clerk's office?
So an opportunity became available when former clerk Riley retired.
Okay.
At that time, I knew, like I said, I had been on my 5th director. At this point, I'm pretty much training these directors as they're coming in, and I knew, talked to my husband, and I said, listen, I'm where I'm going to be. I'm either going to be good with this for the rest of my career,
Right.
or I see this opportunity. Never did I see myself as an elected official. Not really. Politics, I worked the other side, behind the scenes.
Okay.
I was behind the
Okay.
sines
Yeah.
girl, helped out, volunteered
Sure.
since I was 16. Got thrown right into that. My Parker was former Mayor Preby's
Right.
kind of right-hand man on that stuff, so
Uh-huh.
I helped him out a lot. But so I've been involved in politics my whole life. It was a big decision to make, to give up that union security.
Sure.
Because I had the AFSCME backing. I was in the union for over 20 years.
Right.
And then I was union secretary, union steward, union treasurer. I had done all different types of all these different hats to assist the union. So I have a very strong union background, family, my father, my husband.
Sure.
It was hard to step away from that to the uncertainty of an elected.
Oh,
Because I was
absolutely.
appointed,
Yeah.
as you said earlier, but then I knew I would have to run to keep my job in 2013, and that was, it was a lot.
It's
to
got to be a
take
little
on.
nerve-wracking.
Right. So I just made the decision to do it, and I thought, I've got 20 plus years experience in local government. If I happen to not make it through the election, I'll find a job.
Wow.
Like I was confident, scared,
Sure,
scared,
sure.
but
Yeah.
confident. So, and then thankfully it worked out.
Wow, that is a fabulous story. Now, all of the combination of all that movement and all of if you had to knock it down to 3 supervisors in Taylor or elected officials who kind of made the most impression on you. I know that's tough because you've worked with some of the big names. Who could you narrow it down that far?
There are multiple. There are so many. It is hard to narrow it down to 3. I will say that impression-wise, obviously for my political career and to, as a female, move forward, I would say Cameron Preby and Dorothy West.
Okay.
Those 2 were people that I looked up to. I was a young child, and I can remember being terrified when the mayor would walk in the office and, just freeze. And Parker, my boss, would say, when he would walk out of the room, he would say, Cindy, in the morning he gets up, he puts his pants on just like you do.
Yeah.
Just relax.
Right.
And after a while, it just became like second nature. Dorothy, the same way. If she loved you, she loved you.
Okay.
And she took you under her wing, and she taught you things of what was proper, what was not proper, and politically correct.
Sure.
As for my work, who I aspire to be like, and as a boss, I would say Jim Boardman
Okay.
probably made the biggest impact in the 4 years that we did have together. Jim was just a great boss.
Yeah, another guy who, if you interview those who worked for him, I know just talking to various individuals, I don't know whether there's anybody who gets that much respect. Boardman really gets a tremendous amount of respect for his ability to run Department of Public Works.
Being there for 13 years, I did work under some great people who did also taught me a lot. But when Jim came in, we really, I believe, in 4 years, we had accomplished so much. And he taught me what it was like to be respected as a boss, how to ask for respect, because you have to give respect to receive it. So, and he just truly taught me all of that, and just watching him and learning from him meant a lot. It was really hard for me when he moved on.
It's interesting because when you're throwing out some of these names, I mean, Parker Salowich, I worked with his son at the News Herald, the Kim Priebe, Dorothy West, people like that. On the one hand, you look at a lot of people look at them as politicians or political figures. On the other hand, some really good people. I mean, Kim Priebe, one of the great people, okay? Every single reporter, I mean, when I was at the News Herald for years and years and years, every single reporter that we ran into Taylor that reported on Kim Priebe couldn't say enough good. At times you had to be adversarial, okay?
Right.
But the reality was, if you took that away, very few people had that type of impression. Kim Priebe loved Taylor. He loved building Taylor, and there, heaven knows, I think everybody that served in that office has had some redeeming qualities, but Kim Priebe, just personal favorite of mine. I think he's personal favorite of yours. Hard not to be.
Correct. And I mean, I've worked under multiple mayors, and I respect them all. They have all accomplished.
It's a tough job.
It's, in my opinion, it's a 24/7, 365-day a year job. I get that question a lot. Why don't you run for mayor? I'm happy where I am. So it's not something I aspire to be. It's just, it's a tough job. And my job is busy. Like I'm clerk 365 days a year, 24/7 as well. But I also have a point where I can shut it off and be with my family.
I hear you. You bring us full circle. Let's talk about responsibilities of the city clerk. Can you give a dumbed down version for the audience? Exactly what do you do?
So as clerk, you have multiple responsibilities. A lot of people only think that you run elections, and that's the furthest thing from the truth. It is a major part of what I do. But we all, there are so many responsibilities as clerk, record keeper for the city, just keeping that our records are safe and secure and stored properly, and just the protection of the records is a huge thing. We do licensing through the office. Business licensing is a huge part of what we do. Freedom of information requests, or FOIAs. That is, every year I see it go up and up and up and up, the number of requests that we get, and that is for transparent government, and I believe in that. So that is another responsibility of the office that is pretty much a full-time job for one of my assistants. So, that's another big responsibility. And those are I'm just skimming the top, because I certify ordinances. There's keeper of the oath of office. So if somebody is appointed to a board or commission or elected, I'm able to administer the oath of office. So, there's other responsibilities that I'm failing to mention because they're escaping my mind at the moment, even though I did study this last night.
Well, I hear you. Those duties, from the time that you first walked into the clerk's office under Dorothy West, how much have they changed?
Throughout the years, things have become, in a way, easier yet harder. So
Okay.
easier as in the fact that a lot of things are now automated. When I was first in the clerk's office, we did a lot of manual work.
Okay.
Throughout the years, everything has become, automated through technology.
Right.
And so that's been a big accomplishment the last 10 years, is trying to streamline and automate things
Okay.
to make it easier for everyone. So the responsibilities have increased, but in a way they're streamlined. So I don't want to say it's easier, because there is a lot more responsibility, and it seems like daily that just keeps more and more being added to it.
Yeah, I hear you.
But throughout, since my time with Dorothy till now, I would say the difference is, for one, reduction in staff. I mean, we had 7 people when I was in there with Dorothy. I have 4 now, thankfully. When I first started, I was down to 2.
Right.
It was just myself and my deputy for a while. But throughout the years, I would definitely say work has increased, but technology helps with making it faster, but it still doesn't, the volume is also increasing.
Single most important responsibility of a clerk?
I don't think you can pinpoint one that is, elections come to
Okay.
mind right now.
Right.
Especially after 2020, all of the misinformation that was put out there. I will tell you daily, I love my job, love what I do. I love coming to work every day, I love the people I work with, I love the citizens, I love the city. I just don't like what's becoming of elections, because there's just so much false information out there, and unfortunately people will believe what they read on social media over what someone from my office or myself is telling them, when I have no reason to lie. I follow the laws. As you are aware, I will follow laws to the T. I think I've proven that
Right.
throughout the years. No matter what the cost, laws are laws, and they are meant to be followed. And that is a big responsibility, is knowing those laws and knowing what you can and cannot do. And that is one of my number one beliefs, is law is law.
And you have to
And I
uphold
have
it.
to uphold it, whether I agree with it or not, whether a person agrees with it or not. That is not my decision. That is a decision sometimes for a judge,
Sure.
and then also something that can be taken up with your lawmakers to make changes if you disagree with laws.
You touched on an aspect that is such a double-edged sword. Social media. Would we be better off without it?
It is a double-edged sword, and I love social media for keeping up with people that that live far away,
Absolutely.
a family that
Yeah,
lives
yeah,
across this country. So for that aspect, I love social media, seeing people that I haven't seen in 20 years. The misinformation and the people that can hide behind fake profiles or hide behind a keyboard because they don't want to make that phone call, they don't want to meet with me face to face, they don't want to talk about things, they'd rather just put something out there on social media and let it fester. And then there are those that unfortunately buy into things. I fall victim to that sometimes, where I'll fall down a rabbit hole of researching things because I
think
read it
we
on
all
social
do.
media.
Yeah, I think we
Correct.
all do, yeah.
But so it's hard to say that we would be better without it. In a way, we may be, but then in a way we'd be missing out too.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Walk us through a typical election. Okay, how long does it take to prepare? How much do elections cost? That type of thing.
So typically, election preparation is year-round.
Okay.
We're always looking at what happened before, what can we do better, what can we change. The state is always throwing things at us too, to take a look into things that happened. You learn from your mistakes. You learn, and everyone makes mistakes. If they said they didn't, they're lying. It happens, and you learn from them.
Sure.
If you don't, then you need to move on and find
Right.
other employment. But so elections typically start the day after an election. We're planning what we can do better the next time. We're constant election mode is what I call it. However, it picks up. Right now, we're looking into mailing out absentee applications. by law, we can mail them out sometime around mid-May. I don't know the exact date off the top of my head, but they'll go out around that time. And then from there, they'll start coming in. So we start prepping and preparing to mail out absentee ballots, which legally have to be out or available 45 days before the election. So as you can see, like, we get a little bit more of a leeway for August.
Right.
But then once August happens, we get like those few weeks of a breather, kind of, because you're dealing with the canvas too with the county.
Right.
So you may be back and forth downtown with the county looking at things. So there's a small window, the end of August and the beginning of September, where we get a little bit of breather, maybe get some away time, because you're not all summer. My staff, 6 weeks before every election, there's no vacation. Or Dorothy used to say, if you're calling in, you better call in dead. Those were her words, not mine. But, and she was serious because we have a job to do, and no one waits. There are deadlines to be met. And then, so we're right into preparation, like mid-September for November. You know what I mean? So it's like an all year round kind of thing. You're always, like, we're doing training for election workers, mandatory training that's coming up in April.
And those people change.
Those change frequently. Several hundred people work every election. So that's, that's a huge task, and it amazes me, like, how many people work, and there are some dedicated people that have worked elections from Dorothy's days and Mary Ann's days, and they've stayed faithful. So that's, when you have that many people working, the expense of the hours of my office, I would say an average election, $40,000.
Okay.
And that's probably like minimal cost. That's not us having to print ballots. So if the county is not providing the ballots because it's a state or county type of election, if it's a local election, it's on me. So I have to pay for those ballots, and that's about $4,000 or $5,000 just for ballots. There's so much that goes into an election that it's hard to explain to someone. My biggest recommendation to anyone that's curious is the most you can do as a registered voter, besides voting, is work an election if you're able to. It is a paid position. We're always looking for people to work. Doesn't mean I'm going to need everybody that applies, but I may. I never know. I sometimes I'm begging for people. I think my family and my friends, they hide from me when it comes to election time, because they know that I'm looking for help.
I know you touched on something that was important. I want you to reemphasize this, because it's a huge misnomer in the current election atmosphere, and that is, clerks do not just send out absentee ballots.
No. Actually, we're not allowed to. That's illegal. You have to submit a request in writing for an absentee ballot for each election cycle. We are allowed to do the dual apps, so people that sign up for absentee, if they're just signing up and they haven't gotten one in the past, they'll get one for August and November. And that is perfectly legal. Laws are ever changing, and I'm fully aware of that, so I'm on top of that. I'm constantly checking updates with a group that we belong to, as Michigan Association of Municipal Clerks, and we have people that are on a legislative committee, and they're constantly giving us updates on anything that's out there on elections. But yeah, we just will not mail you a ballot, and we get that a lot, where people get the application and say, well, I already did this, I don't have to do this again. No, you do, every time. You may get multiple applications, but not from me. You'll get ours if you've asked for it, but you may also get one from a political party, a nonprofit group, people that want you to vote. In 2020, Secretary of State Benson mailed every registered voter an application for an absentee ballot with my email address on it. So that was quite a bit of work, because I believe in responding to emails. So each person, I didn't just turn on my automatic response. I physically responded to probably thousands.
And that was pandemic
of email.
related.
Yes, and it was. I don't know if there's plans to do that again. Honestly, we were not told until after it was done.
Gotcha.
So it was like, hey, by the way, we sent out everybody an absentee application, and your whatever email you've got on file, that was mine.
Given that you work so closely with the Association of Clerks, and you've been doing this for a while now, in the current atmosphere, I think you folks have some legitimate gripes is probably the wrong word, but maybe some constructive criticism when it comes to elections and the way they're handled and the way you have to handle them. And I think these associations and these clerks have made those valid issues known, okay? Are you really getting help on those issues, or is the political atmosphere so polarized that you really don't get the help you need?
Unfortunately, we're at a time where it just seems that we have two sides that are, they can't agree on anything.
Right.
And the biggest thing I'd like to stress is when I'm clerk, I'm nonpartisan.
Yeah.
I don't care how you vote.
You have a job.
I just want you to vote.
Right.
I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat. When I'm clerk, I'm me, I'm doing my job. And just like I said, and I'll reiterate it 100 million times, I don't care how you vote.
Right.
It is your vote, it is your choice. I'm a person too, I have my own beliefs, but I keep those private because as soon as I mention that I'm behind a certain candidate, then all of a sudden and if they happen to win,
Colors everything.
I had the magical power to make it happen for them, where that's just, I will not go to jail for anyone. And I will say that for out loud to anybody, it's not worth it. And when I first became clerk, I had someone question like a previous election, could it have been rigged? And I'm, no, no.
Right.
Unfortunately, those rumors are never going to stop. I can't stop people from when their candidate doesn't win, they don't accept it. And I understand that. It is hard sometimes to accept loss.
Yeah.
But I believe in our process. And as for if we're listened, I think until the two sides can agree on things, unfortunately, it's going to be constant changes to the process.
Well, it's really ironic when you really think about it that one of the biggest goals that any clerk has is driving the vote. Okay, you want Americans to vote. Okay,
100%.
And yet in this atmosphere, I think certain slants don't want other slants to vote,
Right.
and that puts them in absolute competition with what is one of your basic goals.
Right.
Doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense.
No, and it's difficult because I want the information out there. I want the public to have the education. There are these elections, they're forthcoming, this is what you can do to vote. These are your options. You have multiple options. You can vote by absentee, you can vote in person. No one's going to take that away from you.
Sure.
We're there to help people, and I'll keep saying it, I don't care how you vote, I want 100% participation because I'm preparing on election day, I'm preparing for 100% participation.
Right.
Because I have to be prepared for whether 5,000 people show up at the polls or 50.
Right.
I have 50,000 registered, well, 48, it changes a lot. But
That's a lot of people.
yeah, so I mean, I'm going to be prepared no matter what. Unfortunately, you can only be so prepared, especially when you have a higher turnout on absentee. You don't want to overdo it at the precincts, but you also want to be prepared. You may have a little bit of a wait, but in my opinion, if you'll wait a half hour in line for a cup of coffee at Starbucks, you can wait in line to vote because it's far more important than that cup of coffee.
Exactly. Clerk, assessor, treasurer, you've served in all of those offices.
Yep.
Different jobs, different responsibilities in our city hall, right? Consecutive offices. You guys really work together a lot.
You know, we do, although there are times where I'll see the treasurer and it's like, wow, we haven't seen each other in forever, and we work right in the next offices to each other. And I'm like, well, I'm pretty much there every day. So, but you know, it's, we do work together, and especially with FOIAs, especially the assessor's office, we work with them a lot on those requests. Treasurer doesn't get as many, but we do work together, and I think we work together. We work together well.
What other departments in the city does the clerk's office work with on a most frequent basis?
Probably the building department, planning, city council, obviously, because you know I'm part of that, and then the mayor's office.
Okay.
DPW, police department for FOIAs, so pretty much fire department for FOIAs. So we're pretty much involved with every
The
department.
FOIA job, really.
It
Yeah,
does.
yeah.
It does. It covers the whole spectrum.
And transparency, such a buzzword. I get sick of hearing it, okay? But to people listening, how difficult is it to get public information?
It truly depends on putting that request in. I'm going to use freedom of information to be as clear and concise as you possibly can be. And also to understand that if you're asking for a document that you think maybe was from 2005, but it could have been from 1995, if you're putting us on a major investigative journey, we can charge for FOIAs. Right. So that investigation is going to cost money because it's costing our time,
right.
Which is valuable. So it can be easy to find what you're looking for, and it can be difficult if you're not clear.
Gotcha.
And not everything is available under FOIA, too. I just want everyone to understand that.
You've, tell us about your staff in the clerk's office, because I know your department has been heavily praised, both internally and externally. You have a lot to be proud of with them. Can you go down the list?
Sure. I have my deputy clerk, Sarah El Rafai. Obviously, we know Sarah is a wonderful person. She just received the award from Rotary for Goodfellows. And so she has that going for her, but it's not just that. Sarah is, anything you give Sarah to do, it's going to get done, and there's not going to be an issue. She's helpful to other departments. Whenever there's an issue and she's called upon, she jumps right in. There's things I don't even have to ask for, and they're just done. I truly have no complaints, and I'm constantly aware of other clerks that try to steal her from me. But
Sarah is, in all honesty, I'm not just saying this, Sarah, she's beyond nice. She's one of the brightest people that I've run into in this city. I mean, she is just a sharp lady. She is truly,
and I've heard from several other department heads, they would love to steal her, but they can't have her. But yes, I am blessed in that aspect.
What about the others?
So I have Adam, who is my licensed clerk and he's the FOIA administrator too. He does. I try to help on the more difficult requests, but he's been with me for several years now, and same thing. Everybody needs an Adam. He's just, I'm blessed. They're there every day. I don't have an issue with that. They're on time. They're smiling. Customer service, they didn't even have to be taught. They know when that person calls, we are here for the residents. That is our number one job. Our job is to help the residents that call. And Adam, to hear his interaction with customers, they'll go out of their way to help, which they should do. They'll go out of their way to help somebody on the phone that's not even for our department, but we've been trying to get somebody to answer this question. We can't get through. No matter what happened on the other end, let's see if we can help you. Sure. You know what I mean? So I'm blessed in that aspect. And then I have Sydney, who's newer to my office. She's been there a couple years now. Actually, I think she's going on 3 years now. It feels just like a couple.
So much for new.
I know. She is new. She is the newest one.
Okay.
But same thing. Sid is, helpful, kind. Just listening to them talk on the phone to people. I've never, and knock on wood, I've never had someone call me to complain that they were unhappy with. They might not have liked their answer.
Right, but they got the right
service.
But
yeah, it's never that person had an attitude. Their attitude is they're there to do a job. It's just a pleasure to come to work, and I couldn't be more blessed.
Makes work a little bit more.
It does. We get our work done, but we have fun.
Sure.
And we see each other probably more than we see some members of our family.
Oh, yeah.
So it is like a work. I consider them my family.
Accomplishments since you've been clerk. Anything you are most proud of?
What I'm proud of is I brought in the electronic laptops, the poll books, electronic poll books. I brought those in when I first became clerk. We have updated the absentee processing with high-speed processors, adjudication equipment, which is helpful in When you're processing absentee ballots, it helps to pull out the ballots that have issues so that you can review them and make sure that, if there's an issue, it's just easier to look at versus a manual search. So those are the types of things. Right now I'm working on the filing system throughout the city, the keeping of records. Sure. I was just given this beautiful space in this same building, filing space, and it is a beautiful space. I get excited talking about it because it has been my dream. And I do have former Mayor Sellers to thank for that, because he did provide that space to me, and it is amazing in there. All my shelving is in there, and if you haven't been able to look yet, it's like a little mini Home Depot.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going to be impressive once it's done, and once every department will have their space, and everything will be cataloged, and it's been a dream of mine for the last 10 years to do this.
You touch on an interesting thing, because when it really comes down to it, Rick really did hit a home run here, because what we had was a mess.
Right.
And it's funny because I think you touch on one of the most interesting aspects that just doesn't get touched on enough. Everybody looks at the Veterans Museum, it's beautiful now. Everybody looks at the studio and goes, wow. But from an internal standpoint, we badly needed secured storage, and those units are out of sight.
What I had before was a space that was given years ago. We had a building in the Pine Street parking lot, Women's Relief Corps building, and that is where all of our files were kept. And then we were given this space at the old fire station on Pine Street, and nice facility, nice shelving, but it's just dirty over there.
It only went so far.
And I can only expect so much from our buildings and ground. They're, you know what I mean? They have better things to do than go over and clean cobwebs for me over there.
I hear you.
So this is much nicer, and working with buildings and grounds, Guido and Johnny, and I couldn't be happier. It almost did bring me to tears looking at the facilities that I have now compared to what I walked into. My dungeon over there is what I call it on Pine Street.
Well, you beat the drum and it worked, so that's good. Cemetery cleanup days, that falls under your auspices.
Yes.
You've taken that real seriously, and I've been out there, and you have done a really good job with these, and your volunteers, naturally.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually inherited that when I first became clerk. Things were being cut back. Unfortunately, they had no choice at the time, the administration, to make cuts. And I think grass cutting was an issue at the cemeteries, which I obviously cannot do. However, I was getting the complaints from residents, commission members that happened to be in City Hall. They would be sent my way to complain about the tall grass, and I would ask them, do you going to give me a lawnmower? You know what I mean? I didn't know what to do. So I told my husband, I said, listen, I'm being thrown this situation, and I just feel like I need to do something. And that started my cemetery cleanup process. Now, it was very daunting in the beginning. They were a mess. Throughout the years, throughout the years, we've done a lot. I would love to do more, but there are limits to what I can do. I would love to refurbish some of the stones and everything like that, because it's sad to me when I see them knocked over. Kids just think it's funny to knock these things over. It's very disrespectful, but we do our best to lift up ones we can. Actually, I have 2 cemetery cleanups. I'll give them a plug. April 9th, I believe, is Oak Grove.
Right.
10 to 12, and then Oak Grove is off of Van Born.
Right, the one on Burr.
On Burr,
yes,
south of Van Born. And then I have Golden Ridge, which is just right down Goddard off of McKinley, south of Goddard. That's on April 30th from 10 to 12. And then Oakdale, which is my most interesting cemetery. It's the gravestones are so old in there, like Civil War. It's very interesting in there. That is April 30th as well, from 12 to 2.
Okay.
That one is a little bit more difficult to get to. There's not a parking lot, but whoever is going to go, if they just want to contact me, I'll help them out. But but so it was just a task that was thrown at me, and now with the help of the DPW, they're looking really good.
Yeah, I remember it was probably your first down the one on Burr Street in Northern Taylor, and how much work needed to be done. I remember Charlie Johnson's brother in that northern fence line where this was way beyond just cleaning up.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he looked at this and said, we can't have this overgrowth.
No.
And he went in there and then eventually got DPW involved. And when those guys get involved, they come in.
Yes,
you
they
know.
have the tools. But there's that day, I think we had over 80
Oh, yeah, you had a
compost
lot.
bags.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. And my girls used to love to do it. I don't know if they're going to still be as excited to do it, but hopefully they will. But yeah, it's a great feeling. I have family buried at Oak Grove, but even if I didn't, it's still, they're the city's cemeteries, and we should respect them, and
It's
I
rewarding.
try. It
No
is.
doubt,
It
yeah.
really is.
Speaking of another help day, shred days.
Shred days are coming up. We had to move them. I believe there's one in June, and
Right, I think it's the first week of June.
Yes, I
Might be the
apologize. I
4th,
should have
something
looked at
like
the
that,
dates,
yeah.
but yes, they'll be published out there for folks to see. But it is June, and then I believe we have one scheduled for September as well. And those are for Taylor residents. We do limit what you bring in up to like 3 small boxes,
Right.
because when we fill that truck up, we don't get another one.
Yeah.
So. And
Understood.
but yeah, so far, knock on wood, I haven't filled a truck. Close.
I hear you.
But
I hear you. If you weren't in the clerk's role, what would you be doing?
I would probably still be at DPW.
Okay, all right, okay.
I was just there this morning. I had a meeting with the Wayne County canvassers
Can't
to
stay away.
certify our ballot boxes and other materials. And yeah, I was there today, and I walked in and was speaking with the director, Ralph Richards, and I walked in and I said, I'll always be a DPW nerd. And was looking at their new equipment, and that's the smell of the building. I just love that cold hot patch smell.
Right.
Gasoline, I don't know.
Oh my goodness, you are
know.
a DPW
I
girl.
know. I do. I mean, I spent a long time there, and they have my heart for sure. So if I wasn't here, that's probably where I would still be.
Now you grew up in Taylor.
I did.
Went to Kennedy.
I did.
Okay. What'd your parents do?
My dad worked for Detroit Diesel
Okay.
for, I think, almost 40 years. And my mother was homemaker who held various jobs. Whenever we needed extra money, when I got married, she took on a job to help pay for the reception.
Okay.
So that type of thing. And she also pretty much raised all of, my sisters and my kids.
How many siblings do you have?
5.
5. Big family.
I have 4 brothers and a sister.
Okay. What are they doing now?
So my oldest brother lives up north.
Okay.
My other brothers live around. One lives in Southgate, one lives in Carlton, another lives out in Vegas, and then my sister lives in Taylor.
Okay.
So, and my sister is probably who I am the closest to since I lost my mom. She's like my best friend. I talk
Yeah,
to
you
her
were really
quite.
close with your mother.
I was, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was hard when, I don't know if folks who are watching, when I was sworn in 2017, it was right after, and it was very, very difficult.
Yeah, it could be emotional.
Yeah.
Greatest influence on you as a person?
I would say my parents.
Your parents. Yeah.
Yeah, my dad worked 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I think my love for hard work comes from him. We never went without. We weren't rich by any means, but we never went without. We always had nice things. I was semi-spoiled. I got what I wanted, but within reason. I always tell Gary he knew he was marrying a princess when we married, but my dad was a hard worker, and my mom. My mom took care of all of us. She had 6 kids. She must have been crazy. And then we all, most of us have had children, and like I said, my mom, I never had to worry about childcare. So I was very, very fortunate in that aspect. But they just showed me what hard work can give you if you work hard enough for it.
Okay, now it's Gary, Caitlin, Megan, Caroline.
My babies.
Fill us in. Where are they all at?
So Gary is a 26-year, I'm probably wrong on that, employee of Ford Motor Company.
Okay.
We met, this year we'll be together 30 years in June.
Okay.
Yeah, so June of 92, took me out on our first date and couldn't get rid of me after that.
Where'd you go?
We went to a movie, and we went
Okay.
to Red Lobster.
Do you remember what you saw?
And I talked his ear off. I think we saw Dune.
Dune.
Dune,
Okay. You're
if
really
I'm-
dating yourself now.
Yeah, I know. And it wasn't my type of movie, but
Uh-huh.
we went and we've been together ever since. We just haven't left each other's side. He's my best friend. He's my soulmate. You know, I'm blessed in that aspect. I don't want to get too mushy and
Especially because he's going to hear this somewhere along the way.
Oh, he knows though. Yeah.
What about the girls?
So Caitlin, my oldest daughter, she is she graduated from Michigan State 2018.
Okay.
That was a bittersweet thing because my mom, that was her, you know, she
About
was
the same
so
thing, yeah.
excited. And that's when my mom had cancer, unfortunately, and she was diagnosed, and she kept saying, I just want to be there for Kate's graduation. And she didn't make it. So it was bittersweet, but we're very proud of Katie. So she graduated political science, pre-law, got a job at a law firm in New York, and moved out there in 2019, and she hasn't been back. So she's currently working that job. Unfortunately, she was laid off because of the pandemic.
Okay.
She stayed through the whole entire pandemic, lived out there by her. I said, I don't know how I raised this child who is just so I so relied on my mother's love and just guidance, and not that Katie doesn't rely on me for love, but she just has been independent since kindergarten. I walked in and she looked around and everybody's crying, holding on to their moms, and she looked at me and said, okay, you can go now. At 5, and she was just 5 because we share the same birthday,
Okay.
Caitlin and
All
I,
right.
so
Okay.
she just turned 5.
Okay.
So she's in New York. She has a new job working for Center of State Governments, and that's probably wrong, and I'm sorry, Katie, if you watch this. But so she's working there, like writing grants and that type of thing. My middle daughter, Megan, she's 22. She is working for a company out of Romulus, and they sell like vending equipment stuff. And she's customer service
Okay.
there. And then my baby is 17. She's not such a baby anymore. She's going to be 18 in like 3 months. I know. I'm having I didn't have that hard of a time with Caitlin and Megan, but I'm having a real hard time with Carol. I just can't
Okay.
believe Carolyn's going to be 18. But anyway, so she is still in school.
Okay.
She'll be graduating soon, and then Lord knows what from there. She doesn't want to do the college route, so wherever her life may take her, she's into singing and
Nothing wrong with
all that fun stuff. No, not at all. I tell her follow her dreams, and I'm not going to force her into a debt that she doesn't want to be into.
Girls that age, they crack me up because when you don't see them as often as like I would. I mean, Caroline, I'll see her here, and then I'll see her a year later, and I'll kind of do a triple take because I'm not sure that's Caroline. I did the same thing with Morgan Hewlin, who looks this way and then looks that way, and you know, it's really kind of comical because the girls really change at
They
that,
do.
at that
They
age.
do. They change daily, and yeah, I saw pictures of my girls popping up from Facebook, and I just they're my world. Like, I love my job,
Right.
but ultimately, my family. I have a very strong connection with my family, and you know, my sister and her daughters. My sister had her first child when I was 5, so you know what I mean. It's,
Oh, yeah,
it's been a constant part of my mom babysat, and
Oh, yeah.
you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
it's been a constant piece of my life to have my sister has 3 daughters as well, so to have all these females, my poor husband.
He's a lucky
I have
guy.
female animals too. Oh yeah, I didn't talk about my animals, my babies.
What animals do you have?
I have Pepper and Sophie. They were adopted Shih Tzus from the animal shelter.
Oh, okay.
Sophie was in a breeding ring and adopted by Paws, and ultimately I got
Wow.
her from them.
Okay.
But she
All
came
right.
from the Taylor Animal Shelter.
Okay.
And then Pepper was brought into the animal shelter as a surrender, and that's actually, she's Gary's dog. She loves him more than she does me, but that's okay. But yeah, and then we have cats too, and love I'm an animal lover. If I could have a dream, it would be to be rich and save all the animals in the world, and homeless people, but you know.
When you're not doing your clerking and you're not hung up with everybody in your family, what does Cindy like to do?
Decorate.
Decorate. Oh, really?
I
Okay.
well, holiday decorations.
Okay.
If you follow me at all on social media, I'm a Christmas freak. Like I plan for Christmas, I'm already ready. Like,
Okay.
bring it on. Santa, I love. My husband just took me to Bronner's, and I was like a kid in a candy store. It was.
Did you guys get new pajamas?
We will. We will
yeah,
always,
that's a tradition.
I actually already have them for next
I
year.
thought about a photo, but I said, maybe not.
No, that's it. My girls know Christmas Eve. It's difficult with Kate being in New York, but we made it work for the pandemic. I sent her and her boyfriend the matching pajamas so that we could all, and I'm like, okay, you have to send me your picture too, so we can have it together, but I'll make it work.
One last thing, Cindy.
Sure.
Still a young woman. Aspirations moving forward. What do you want to do? How you want this to play out?
You know, I would love to remain clerk here for as long as people will have me, and as long as I can handle it. It is becoming more and more challenging. You know, and I'll continue as long as it never becomes personal or I ever feel afraid for my life. And it might sound silly to some, but there are clerks that have received threats on their life, on their family's life, and that won't work with me. Just like anyone,
The whole
it
thing
won't be
is
acceptable.
rather ridiculous when you think about
and
it.
it's unacceptable. And once it becomes more than I can handle, there may be a point to step away. But I was taught to never walk away from a challenge. So I'm here as long as the voters will have me, and then one day whenever that will be, that I hang up my hat on clerk world. I just want to spend time with my husband and my kids, and maybe one day grandkids.
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Cindy, I could talk to you all day.
I know.
You're such a pleasure, but I am not going to hang you up because I know you have a busy day.
Thank you.
That's about it for this show. Thanks for coming on. Continued success in the clerk's office and with everything else you've got going.
Thank you.
For Joe Camilleri, Samantha Rickert behind the scenes, I'm Carl Zymak. Thanks for joining us on another Up Close and Personal, this time with Cindy Bauer. We'll see you next time when we feature another one of Taylor's leaders.
Bye, everybody.